So, good morning, students and faculty also. So, in the yesterday's class, we have seen about the I/O data transfer schemes. For effective data transfer between the CPU, memory, and the I/O devices, we have seen three techniques. One is programmed I/O, next one is interrupt I/O, and the third one is the DMA data transfer. Okay. So, programmed I/O means the data transfer will be accomplished through the input and output instruction. An interrupt is the communication between the device and the CPU will be through the interrupt signal. And DMA is by bypassing the processor, we are transferring the data between the memory and time. Okay. In today's class, we are going to see about the multiprocessor configuration. So as we all know, 8086 is a 16-bit processor and it will be processed as uniprocessor and also multiprocessor. So multiprocessors to the main processor 8086 will be having other processors also attached with that. That is 8087 is a mathematical coprocessor which is used to perform mathematical operation, and 8089 is an IO processor which is used to control all the devices. Okay. So multiprocessor system will have two or more processor that can execute instructions or perform the operations simultaneously. Since in 8086 processor, the execution is parallel. Okay, so we are going this multiprocessor configuration. There are three basic configurations here: coprocessor, it's 8087, and closely coupled configuration and loosely coupled configuration. You have heard this word now in OS. You'll be having tightly coupled and loosely coupled. I have so. Okay, let us see the coprocessor first. Advantages of multiprocessor configuration is, so the more number of low cost processor can be combined together, and if you want to add one processor to that, so a processor can be added, so we can add more number of processors, and if there is any fault in any processor, it can be replaced also. So these are the main advantages of the multiprocessor configuration. So the first one is we have coprocessor configuration. So coprocessor is used to perform all the mathematical operations. So suppose if an 8086 executes an addition or subtraction, multiplication, division instruction, that instruction will be given to the coprocessor. Then coprocessor will execute that instruction. The output will be given to the main processor. Okay. So like this, so the same task can be completed very quickly and it reduces the workload of the main processor. Okay, the coprocessor can handle the mathematical calculations or also graphical display on the screen. All this will be controlled by the coprocessor. So this is the diagram that is showing the connection between 8086 and coprocessor. See here we have 8086 at the top here that is connected with the coprocessor 8087. Okay. So here the memory and the IO and the clock generator, all these are shared by the main processor and also the coprocessor. And we have the system bus. We know the system bus is nothing but a group of wires which is used to carry the information. So it consists of address bus, data bus, and control bus. Okay, you got it? So this is the diagram to show the communication between 8086 processor and the coprocessor. Like this, it will be connected, and memory, IO, and the clock, everything will be shared by both the processors. Okay. So let's see, this is the flow chart here. This 8086 and 8087 will communicate this pins through this test and busy pin. Almost the pins available in 8086 is same as 8087. Since the communication, there has to communicate, almost all the pins are same. Through this test pin only, this 8086 will be communicating this 8087 coprocessor. Let's see here. So whenever we have how to differentiate the 86 and 8087 instruction is, 86 instruction we have add, no? In 87, it will be replaced by F add. Okay, F represents floating point operation. F add, F sub, F div, F multiply, F R, like this. So all the operations, okay, arithmetic or logical operations, all the instruction will be added with the letter F in front of it. So when 86 is executing that instruction, it will identify it is a coprocessor instruction and it will be given to the coprocessor. Okay. So F add in the opcode, every instruction will be having an escape prefix. So this is not this by using this prefix only, the 86 will identify it is a coprocessor instruction. Got it? So when the 86 find this escape prefix in that instruction, so that will be given to the coprocessor. Okay. So what coprocessor does is it will deactivate the test pin and it will execute that specified operation. Suppose if it is F add means it will execute that addition operation. And if that output is ready means it will activate the test pin. Okay. So then this is activate the test pin. It comes here and the processor knows the data is ready and it can get the data from the coprocessor. When the coprocessor is performing these operations at the same time, the main processor will be executing its own instructions, 8086. So why we are going for this wait is, so already 86 has completed its process and it is waiting for the result to be sent by 87. So that only some wait stages are included here. Okay, you understood? Let me repeat here. So whenever the 86 main processor sees the floating point instruction, it is suffixed by escape instruction. It will be given to the coprocessor. Okay. Then the coprocessor will deactivate the test pin and it will execute the instruction. So when the data is ready, it will activate the test pin. So the that is the main processor understand that the data is ready and it will be fetching the data from here. Okay. So when coprocessor is performing all this operation, the main processor will execute its own instruction and at this stage it will get the data from the coprocessor and the execution will be over. Okay. So this is the how 86 and 87 communicates here. So this is the block diagram representing the connection between 86 and 87. So here we have 86. So this 88 is another processor. That is 8088 processor. It is also a 16-bit processor, but in some configurations it differ from 86 and 88. Okay. So 87 is a co-processor which is common for this both the processor 8086 and 88. Suppose if the processor is 80126 means the co-processor will be 80127. Okay, that is the last digit will be 7 for a coprocessor. 80126 means the coprocessor is 80127. Then 8012, sorry, 2 like this means the last digit will be 7. Okay, see here, this is the clock generator. 8284 is the clock generator, and here this 8259 is nothing but an interrupt controller. We have more number of interrupts to the processor. To control this, we are having an interrupt controller 8259. We'll be seeing in the later units. Okay, and here 8288 is a bus controller. Okay, here let's see this request and grant signal of 8086 is connected to the request and grant signal of 8087. Okay, and see here the ready signal of 8086 is connected to the ready signal of 8087. Like this, the reset signal also connected to the same line in 8087. And we have the clock signal and the QS0 and QS1 of 8086 is connected with this. Okay. Request, and here also it is connected. And see here, the busy signal of 8087 is connected to this test. So through this test and the busy pin only, both this 8086 and 8087 will be communicating. Hope you understood. Kalyan Kumar, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the connection between 86 and 8087 processor. Okay, so I repeat this: 8087 is a mathematical processor which is used to perform mathematical operations. Okay, don't forget that. Okay, so let's the second one is closely coupled configuration. In closely coupled, we have an I/O processor. So this I/O processor will control all the devices connected to it. Okay. So what is this? Is again, if we have a scanf statement or printf statement, so that will be given to the processor. Okay, independent processor 8089, and that will perform the function. Okay. So here, let's see here the wake up independent processor with out instruction. Okay, out means suppose if we have the printf statement, so when it is converted to assembly language, it will be converted as an out instruction. And if there is a scanf statement, means it will be converted as in instruction, right? So here we have a printf statement. So it is converted as out instruction in the assembly language. And whenever the processor executes its out instruction, the transfer is controlled to the IO processor. And this will fetch the message and perform the particular task. And then after completing this task, it will notify the CPU that I have completed the process. Okay. So suppose if there is a scanf statement means, so that will be given to this IO processor. So the task to be completed by IO processor is it will get the data from the keyboard. Okay. After getting the data, it will be indicated to the main processor. At the same time, when 8089 is performing its task, 8086 can execute its own instruction. And here it will be waiting until the data is ready. Okay, so wait stage will be there in closely coupled and also in co-processor. Suppose if the data is not available at the particular time, the main processor will be waiting. Okay, hope you understood. So whenever, I repeat this, whenever there is a printf for scanf statement, so that will be given to the independent processor. It's nothing but an IO processor that will perform the task. Okay. Like this, suppose if we have a print statement means, so we have to print the data, that is, we have to display the data in the monitor. So that task will be given to the processor, IO processor 8089. And after completing that task, it will indicate the CPU through this interrupt request line. Okay. So this is the diagram that shows the connection between the 8086 and 8089. So here we have the IO processor 8089. We'll be studying the architecture of 8089 also, how it function, what are the functions of 8089 in the next classes. Okay. So IO processor we have, and here all the devices are connected. Okay, P1, P2, P3, P4, like this, all the devices are connected. And we have the host CPU, that is the main processor. And this will be communicating through this line, and the acknowledge signal, that is interrupt, will be through this line. Okay, so this is the connection between 8086 and 8089. Okay. And here the third one is loosely coupled configuration. So the first one is in multiprocessor configuration. It is a co-processor. Second one is closely coupled. That is IO processor is involved in that. And the third one is loosely coupled configuration. So here what it is, here we can have different modules. See here, this is one module and this is one module, another module. So like this, in the loosely coupled configuration, we can add more number of modules. That is, modules means, for example, you can take an example, that is one part of application can be added with this. So more number of applications can be combined together in the loosely coupled configuration. So here this is module 1 and this is module 2. Okay. So here the system memory is shared by all the modules. So you have a shared system memory and we have the shared IO devices. Okay. Suppose if the device, suppose if we have a fax machine, let's take an example as a LAN connection also. So LAN, we have a common printer. So that printer will be connected to all the systems, no? So that printer is shared by all the modules. That is a very good example here. And every module will be having its own clock generator, and also it will be having its own local memory and local IO devices. As we know that, no? So if you have a computer, it will be having its local memory inside this, and we having the local IO devices. It is keyboard, mouse will be connected to the single computer. So that is a module. Okay, so there is a LAN connection. So the system memory, we can have shared system memory, and IO devices can be shared. And the main advantage is more number of modules can be added to that. And another one is, if some modules, if there is any problem in a module means, so it will not affect the other modules. Okay, so this, if this module 2 is in failure means, so no problem. The other modules will be working. That is the main advantage of loosely coupled configuration. I hope you understood. Students, please, Akash, are you able to follow? Kalyan Kumar, do you want me to repeat or it's okay?
Okay, ma'am, you can repeat now once.
Okay, fine. Okay. So this is a loosely coupled configuration. We can have modules. So the single module is nothing but a computer. This is one computer and this is one computer. Okay. So every module, that is every computer will be having its local memory and the local IO devices. So local IO devices are nothing but the keyboard and mouse connected to the computer. Okay. So like this here also, we have another computer connected to this. So we have its own local memory and the local IO devices. Like this, we can connect n number of computers. That is, n number of modules can be connected. Okay. So every modules will be having its own shared memory and also shared IO devices. So this is nothing but the LAN connection we have. Example is the LAN connection. So we'll be having a printer as a common device, no? It will be shared by all. Suppose if in a LAN connection, there are 10 computers connected together, 10 nodes are there, and we have a printer connected to that. Okay. So that printer will be shared by all the computers connected in that LAN. That is the shared IO devices. Hope you understood. And also the main advantage is we can add n number of devices, no? In LAN connection, suppose if you want, already there is 10 systems there. We want to connect another node, means it is very easy for connecting another node. Okay. Like this, suppose if there is any failure in one computer means, so that can be removed, detached from this. So the failure of a computer will not affect the other computers. Hope you got it. Okay. So these are the main advantage of loosely coupled configuration. So these are the advantages here listed. Okay. So let's again come to this advantages of multiprocessor configuration. So here there are three techniques. Okay, one is the coprocessor. Second one is the closely coupled configuration in which we have the IO processor 8089. And the third one is the loosely coupled configuration. Okay, so these are the three multiprocessor configurations available. So the advantages of multiprocessor configuration is here we can get the throughput will be high. And as I said earlier, so the system can be expanded in a modular form. That is, more number of modules can be added and also can be removed. If you don't want any module means we can remove that module. And a failure in one module will not affect the entire system. Okay. And 8086 processing is parallel. So by using this technique, multiprocessor configuration techniques, we can get a greater degree of parallel processing. So these are the main advantages of multiprocessor configuration. Okay, the throughput will be high, and by adding more number of modules, that is, we can expand it, and the failure of one module will not affect the whole system, and it's a greater degree of parallel processing can be achieved. These are the main advantages. Hope you understood this. So multiprocessor configuration, we have three: coprocessor, closely coupled and loosely coupled. So these are the three configurations. Okay. So now, hope you understood that. So very important technique here is the bus is connected with many units. Okay, that is memory, IO devices, and the processor. So the bus has to carry the data between all this memory. Hope you remember the diagram. We have the CPU, memory, and IO. The system bus. Okay, the system bus will carry the information to the CPU, memory, and the IO devices. So for accessing the bus for data transfer in an effective way, we are following a technique that is called as arbitration. So that is mechanism used for accessing the bus is called as arbitration. So we have three mechanisms. That is, one is daisy chaining, another one is polling, and the third one is independent requesting. Okay. So these are the three mechanisms we are using for bus arbitration: daisy chaining, polling, and independent requesting. So let's see these three techniques one by one. The first one is daisy chaining. So here's the bus master is a controller, and here we have the devices D1, D2, D3. So n number of devices can be connected to this. Here we have three lines. So one is bus request, bus busy, and bus grant signal. Okay, so these are the three lines needed for this bus arbitration. Bus request and bus busy is common to all the devices. Okay, So all the devices will be connected to this bus request and bus busy. And bus grant signal is connected as a daisy chain method. It's arranged in a daisy chain pattern. So bus grant is connected to one device D1, and from this D1, the bus grant will be given to D2, and from D2, it will be given to D3. Okay, so only 3 signals are used here. And here, suppose if a device request needs a bus means, it will send a bus request signal. Okay, so it will send a bus request signal. Then here the bus that will reach the bus master, and the bus master will give the bus grant signal. Okay, so according to the priority, the devices will be selected. In daisy chaining method, D1 has the highest priority. The device that is connected, that is near to the master, has the highest priority. So when the bus master receives a bus request, so that will be, that is, we are going to give the bus grant signal. So the bus master will issue the bus grant signal. So this bus grant signal will go to this device, D1, and it checks whether, so D1 has requested the bus. As an example, I have told this, there is a request from D3 only, from device D3. So when D1 receives this grant signal, it says, I didn't request. Okay. So next D1 will forward that to D2. Here also D2 will say that I didn't request the bus. So that will go to D3. And here you can say this D3 has requested. So it will accept the bus for data transfer. Okay. So when D3 accepts the bus, it will make this bus busy signal high. So that now the bus is used by the device D3. Hope you understood. Let me repeat it. So suppose if we have a bus request signal from a device, let us take an example from D3, okay, bus request. So that will be indicated to the bus master here. Then bus master will select according to the priority, and it will issue the bus grant signal here. So when D1 receives this bus grant signal, it will check there is no request from D1. So it will forward to the device next to that is D2. So here also there is no request here. So this D2 will forward this to the D3. So here there is a request. So the bus will be given to this D3 device. Okay. So when D3 receives the bus for data transmission, so it will make this bus busy signal high. So that is the 3 steps here. It is given. If bus not busy means make a request to the master, and bus master activates the bus grant signal. And if a device gets a bus grant, it will mark the bus busy signal. Okay, hope you got it. So the main advantage of this is it is very simple. And also we have only 3 address lines, bus request, bus busy, and bus grant. So the disadvantages, suppose it's a fault or a poor fault, or suppose if there is any failure in D2, the communication cannot be transmitted to the next device. So all the devices connected to it cannot be communicated. So that is the main disadvantage of this daisy chaining. Okay. So if any of the device becomes fault means further the other devices connected to this cannot be communicated. So that is a poor fault tolerance. And another one is the priority. So since I told you the device near to the master will have the highest priority, always D1 will be given the priority. Suppose if this is frequent request from D1 means, so that will be accepted again and again. So devices connected to the other side will not be accepted. Suppose if we are having 100 devices means, so the request of the 100th device will not be accepted, because since the remaining all the devices connected to the front will be having the highest priority. That is also a main disadvantages. So I hope you understood this daisy chaining method, okay? So next one is polling method. The same concept here. So we have the bus request and the bus busy signal same as daisy chaining method. And we have polling lines, there is n number of polling lines. So suppose if there are n devices means n polling lines will be there, okay? So n polling lines will be there. So how to identify this is, so here this in this polling lines, the device ID will be transmitted. So here, every device will be having a device ID. Okay. So suppose if there is a request from, again, let us take a request from D3 miss. So the bus master will, and according to the priority, that is the device will be selected and the device ID D3 will be transmitted over this line. Okay. So this K refers here, K lines are there. That is K devices. Okay. So K devices are there. So there are K lines. So the ID will be transmitted over all the K lines. So 0 D3 will be transmitted. So when coming to this, here D1 it will check the matching whether D3 the ID is in the polling line. It matches with D1. No, here it is D1 and in the polling line it is D3. So now D2 will check whether it matches. It doesn't matches. So now it goes to D3. Okay. So when here D3 and the ID also D3, so the bus will be given to this device D3. Hope you understood. So in the polling lines, the device ID will be transmitted. So the bus will be given to the device in which it matches. So the device number and the device ID that is traveling in the polling lines must match. So if it is matches means the device will be given the bus. Okay. So the advantages of this is, main advantages, if one system fails also, the other, there is no problem in the other devices. That is the communications will be there in all the other devices. Okay. It will be working fine. That is the advantage of this. And disadvantages, so here, suppose if there are n devices, we have n, that is k devices means we have k lines, no? Suppose if we have more number of devices means more polling lines will be added. That is the main disadvantages. And because we are having this polling lines added more and more, there will be polling delay also. Okay. So these are the main two disadvantages of this polling method. That is polling lines, that is control, maintaining the polling lines is difficult and there will be polling delay. Okay. So the steps for this polling is, that is the same step as daisy chaining. If bus not busy, make a request to the master and then the master polls by placing the device ID on the polling lines. Okay. Then here also the master decides the priority. And if the device gets a bus grant, then we have to mark the bus busy signal. Okay, hope you understood this polling method also. So next one is the independent request. So here we have the bus busy signal common to all the devices and request and grant signal which is connected to all the devices. That is, suppose if we have n devices means there will be 2n connections for request and grant. Okay. So suppose if there are 3 devices, here we have 3 devices, there are 3 request lines and 3 grant lines. Having more number of lines also is very drawback. It's a very great drawback for this. Okay. So every devices will be having this request and grant line. That is the independent request. So according to the priority, the devices will be selected. Suppose if D2 needs a bus means it will request the master through this R2, and if the system bus is free, that will be indicated through this grant signal GT. Okay, so GT, and when the system bus is free means so DT can access the system bus and it will go for data transfer and it will make this bus busy signal also high. Hope you got it. Okay. So here the steps are also same steps that will be followed in all the remaining 2. If bus not busy means we are making a request to the master and the master decides who to grant the access and indicate through grant lines. Then if a device gets the bus grant signal, then it will mark the bus busy signal. So these are the 3 bus arbitration methods we are using to access the bus, effective bus data transfer. Okay. So let's see here, there are the daisy chaining method, polling method and independent request. Okay. So here the advantages of this daisy chaining method is, it is very simple and only 3 lines are there. Okay, bus request, bus busy, as bus grant signal. And the disadvantages is poor fault tolerance. That is, if one device becomes, that is, if one device is not working means we cannot communicate with the other devices. That is the main disadvantages of this daisy chain method. Okay. So next one is the polling method. Here the disadvantage is adding more number of polling lines is difficult, and there will be polling delay also. And for independent request, here this is the independent request is the fastest method. Okay. And here the main disadvantage is more number of requests and grant lines. Creating that is very difficult. So that's all about this bus arbitration. Hope you understood this. Students, network issue, what is it? Yes, Kaushika. Okay, fine. Okay, so first we are seeing about the multiprocessor configuration. That is coprocessor, closely coupled configuration, and loosely coupled configuration. Okay. So next is for effective data transfer between the CPU, memory, and I/O devices. We are following the technique that is bus arbitration. So in this, we are having three methods: daisy chaining, polling, and independent request. Okay. So when you are asked to explain about bus arbitration, it may be asked for 8 marks. You have to draw the diagrams and you have to write explanation about the diagrams. And also you have to mention all the advantages and disadvantages as I have told you. Okay. So the materials will be available in the Google Classroom also. You can follow that. So next one is, let's see this coprocessor 8087. So this is the first math processor for 16-bit processor. Okay, 8086 or 8086. The math processor is 8087. So here, what is the purpose of this is to speed up the communications involving floating point calculation. So you have studied in DPST, floating point data, so IEEE like that. Okay. So the floating point data will be having the mantissa part and the exponent part. Hope you remember that. Then you can do this addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, scientific calculation, and algebraic functions. So all these operations can be performed by this 87 processor. And in order to free up the CPU time, when 87 is doing some process, 86 also will be doing some process. Okay. So, and also to increase the overall speed and performance of the entire system, we are going to for this 8087 processor. So this is a pin diagram of 8087. So do you remember this? We have two ground pins, no? Here 1 and 20. Here also we have the same ground pin. And see here, AD 14, 15, 12, 13, all these are address lines, AD 1 to AD 14. And here NC means no connection. Okay. So here I left a bit, it seems. This is interrupt, okay, INT, okay. Here no connections, NC means no connection. And we have the clock signal. And see the 21st pin, it is reset and then ready signal. And here busy. Through this busy signal only, it will communicate with 8086 processor. And here we have the queue status, QS0 and QS1. That is, what is the data we are going to fetch? Whether it is one data or this two data or consequent data from the queue. What is the size of queue available in 8086 processor? Put the answer. What is the size of the queue available in 86 processor? First, do you have a queue there? Do you remember the architecture diagram? What is the size of the queue? Yeah, 8 byte. Very good. Kaushika. Very good, Kaushika. So it is 8 byte. Okay. So normally we are using the queue for parallel processing. And we have the status signals S0, S1, S2. It represents the cycles. Okay. Whether we are memory read, IO write, IO read like this. So we are having 7 combinations of this. And here 29 and 30 is no connection. And 31st pin is request and grant 0. And we have interrupt and request and grant 1. And 34th pin is BHE. What is BHE? BHE? So BHE is bus high enable signal. Okay. So I hope you're not studying properly, it seems. Are you referring the notes and studying? So BHE is bus high enabled signal, which is used to select the bank. As 86, we have odd bank and even bank. So BHE along with A0 is used to select the bank. So odd bank or even bank. Okay. So next is we have this A16, 17 combined with the status signal S3 and S4, which is used to refer the regions, whether we are accessing code segment region or data segment or SAC segment or exhaust segment. And A18 is combined with the S5. It refers the status of the interrupt flag, and S6 and X7 will be 0. Okay. So this is the pin diagram of 8087 processor. Almost all the pins. So when you study the 86 processor pins very thoroughly, so no need to study here. So the reputation of this. Okay. So the main signal communication between 8086 and 8087 is performed by this busy signal. Okay, busy signal pin number 23. And this is the architecture of 8087 processor, coprocessor. Okay, so it has two major sections. That is the control unit and numeric execution unit. Numeric execution unit and control unit. So this control unit communicate with the microprocessor system bus. Okay, this interface, this is an interface between the microprocessor and this coprocessor. So this, and also it synchronizes the operation of the coprocessor and the microprocessor. Okay, so this control unit has the control word register, status word register. So these two are 16-bit register. We'll be seeing that. So every bit of this registers will be representing some data. Okay. So control word register is used to control, as the word specifies, it is used to control the 8087 coprocessor, and status word is used to read the status of the coprocessor. That is, if there is any error or something, by reading the status word, we can identify what type of error it is. Okay. So next we have this data buffer register. So through this data buffer register only, the data will be transmitted from 8086 to 8087. So next coming to this numeric execution unit here, it's a great part of this. So in this only all the operations we have performed. So here we have registers. So in 86 we have AL, BL, CL like this, no register set. But here we have a register set. Here we have a register set. That is a stack. Okay, stack register. So here we have 8 registers available. Okay, 0 to 7 registers, and every register is 80 bits. Every register is 80 bit. Since it is used for floating point operation, see here, this is a floating point data, which has the mantissa part and the exponent part. Okay, mantissa and exponent part. So here, how to represent this 80 bit is, the mantissa part will take 64 bits and the exponent part will be represented by 16 bits. Okay, so mantissa is 64 bit and the exponent part is 16 bit. So let's see here this, see here. So this is the exponent bus. So here we have a cross, no? So this line refers, it is a 16 bit. Okay, that is the exponent part is 16 bit, or able to see here, the cursor is there, 16 bit. And see here, this the mantissa part, okay, the fractional part. So here we have the 64. So this is 64 bit. Lines will be there. 64 lines will be there. And here 16 lines will be there. Okay. So all the 80, so this registers will be used for all the operations. Okay. Since we have a stack here, so it is the technique used here is last in, first out. So whatever we push last will be fetched first. Okay. Can you give an example for this stack? A real time example, you have studied data structure. Anyone? How will you remember this stack? So we are having different data structures, no stack, queue, linked list. How we remember this stack? So anyone had idli as breakfast today morning? So I hope, ma'am, what is it? We didn't have the breakfast. I think from most of them the answers will be that because you woke up late, no? So you didn't have your breakfast. Am I right? For some people, yeah. So for some people, so idli will be a very, what is it, disliked food. They won't like idlis because from the early stage, from when we are baby, so idli will be given as the breakfast. No, most of them don't like it. Often I also don't like idli. So let us take an example as an idli, okay? So, so idli rack, no? Have you seen that idli rack? Suppose you haven't seen after this class, you go to the kitchen and see the idli rack, okay? So ask your mother to show that. So idli rack, no, we have the rack, idli rack. I hope you remember the image, bring it in your mind. So in the idli rack, what is the last rack that is put inside will be taken as the first one. Okay. So that is the, suppose if you are pushing the data into the stack means that is pushing one rack to the idli rack. Remember that. So pushing that. Okay. So popping means in between this, the rack in between this cannot be popped out, you know, because there will be a spindle in the idli rack. So we cannot remove the rack from the middle. So the top of that can be taken out. That is a pop operation. Okay. So like this, we imagine this. So when we push the data, what the address will be there. And when we pop the data, what the address will be there. Okay. So this is the suppose, and also suppose if there is if the idli rack is full, suppose if you are having 6 idli racks, the spindle can occupy that only. We cannot put the 7th rack into that, right? That is the overflow condition. And underflow is there is no idli rack. You are trying to pull that idli rack means there is the underflow condition. Okay, you hope you understood this. So take it. So take this idli rack as an example for stack, so that till your death you won't be forget that. Okay. So here, as we all know, the technique is last in first out, and we have the push and pop operation. So the top of the stack is here, this 0, ST of 0. So all these registers in this will be referred as ST stack, ST of 0, ST of 1, ST of 2, ST of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So top of the stack will be ST of 0. So it will vary. Sometimes the 5th register will be the top of the stack, and sometimes 6th will be at the top of the stack. Like this, it may differ. Actually, this in this register stack, it is a circular stack. Okay, that is already 8 elements are there in the stack, and suppose you are pushing the 9th element means, so it will be returned into this. That is the next location will be overwritten with the 9th data. Okay, so that we must be very careful in pushing the data into this stack. So if the stack is full, we must not push the data into this, right? Since it is a circular stack, already 8 data are available. Suppose if you are pushing the 9th data means the data will be overwritten. So we must be very careful when we are programming this 8087. Hope you got it, okay? So here we have this temporary registers which is used for division. So division, one of the data must be in this register and another one must be in this temporary registers. Okay. Then here we have the arithmetic module which is used to perform the arithmetic operations. And here we have the exponent module also. Here the exponent values will be there. Then programmable shifter we have, that is, so normally when we do this multiplication or addition, suppose let us take here example. So 8, no? So 8 here when we convert that into binary, it is 1000. And when we right shift, so here this 1 will be moved to this position 0100. What it is? It is 4. That is 8 is divided by 2. That is the division operation can be performed by this shifting operation. Okay. For this we can use this programmable shifter. And also when we take this here one, no, -4. Suppose if we convert this as -4 to -5 like this also, so this shifting operations will be performed. Okay. Like this for multiplication, let us take this example. Okay, 0100, and we left shift the data, we'll get the data 1008. So 4 into 2, we get this. For this purpose, and also for all the other shifting operations, this programmable shifter is used. I hope you understood this architecture. In the remaining classes, we'll be seeing all the control registers and status. Hope students able to follow? So I will be repeating this architecture again in the next class, okay? So today we saw about the multiprocessor configuration, that is a coprocessor, closely coupled and loosely coupled, and then the bus orbitation and a part of 8087. Hope students, are you listening to the class or are you preparing for the quiz? See, another one information is those who have failed in quiz and those who are absent special classes in the afternoon. So from 2 to 4, we'll be organizing the special classes. So I want all the students to score good marks in the quiz. Keep in mind, for the absentees and the failures and those who have scored less than 70 marks in the quiz will be asked to attend the coaching classes, special classes. Every day we are planning for special classes. You can stop recording, Kalyan Kumar. Kalyan Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm
Stop
doing
recording.
it.
Okay. Okay. So if you have scored less than 70 marks,